Need a picture book? Yes, actually would be helpful. No, okay, not that important. No, it's we just think it's a very, very lot to do, so we need to really start already. I'm sorry, right. It should be now online. Is it online? Hey, good evening, everyone. We've got a very lot to do. It's a lot of Mishnah, it's a lot of topics. So we'll just start straight away. We're up to the Mishnah Tzadik Chesam with base. Right. This is going to have now a number of Mishnahs. We're going to have to try and reconcile them all. About somebody standing in one domain and carrying in another domain. If you remember, we once discussed this actually. Yes, yeah, a lot of Shabbos. In fact, this asks the question why it's not in Shabbos. This is proper Shabbos. This asks the question why it's not in Shabbos. It says because these are like interesting example cases. So therefore, it's when we've finished everything else. So it's just like close to get all the. Okay. So let's say I'm standing at home and I see a ball in the Rishus Rabbim, and I lean out of my window, pick up the ball, and move it 3 amos. Have I done anything wrong? What would the problem be? Okay, that's besides the fact it's less than 4 amos. The big problem is there's a small chance of all I end up doing, take it into my house. That's the Mishnah we're discussing. The person is out to stand in Rishus Rabbim, is allowed to carry in Rishus Rabbim. Or alternatively, we should stand inside the Shusavim without which as long as they move it 4 amos. That means, what is essentially the Mishnah teaching us? That we're not chayshish that you may come to move from A to B. You're not allowed to urinate from one to the other. Why? Because it's its own You're not allowed to spit. We're going to see the two kinds of spit, the saliva and phlegm. Most of the sugars talk about saliva, later talk about phlegm. Oh, the difference has got to do with how separate is it from your body. Saliva is considered more part of your body. Phlegm is considered something which is like separate a little bit. Once you've got spit in your mouth, saliva in your mouth, you mustn't walk 4 amos until you spit it out. Once, a few years ago, one of my sons wasn't there, so I said to him, go and daven by brisk on Yom Kippur. I said, just that you should have the memory of seeing people spitting on Yom Kippur, that they don't swallow down the saliva, they shouldn't be over the issa. That's right. I know you all love hummus, so I'll tell you a couple of hummus. No. I'm just teasing you. I'll ask you a question. In the carrying of Shabbos, there's a certain halacha which we've learned dozens of times, that in order to be chayav, what do you have to do? She's having 4 amos, but more than that, even more than that, it has to be something of value. If you carry a kvam, or you chayav, no. Now this is even harder. Mevaglan, urine. What do you use your urine for? Moshe, what do you do with the urine? No, it doesn't. What's more in Shabbos say? What do you do? Very good. What do you wash your clothes with? Do you put a wash on? No, you use urine. So now which urine do you use? Any of you remember? No, it's quite hard to remember. In order to wash your clothes in old days, they used to use meraglaim. It has to be old urine. It can't be fresh. Fresh doesn't clean so well. And also spit. Spit has to be old spit. What? Yes, saliva. Fake the Rishonim a kasha. What's the kasha? You should all be asked the question. Oh, very good. It's got no value. What's the problem of urinating from Rishus Yochid to Rishus Rabbim and carrying something that has no value? No. At this stage, it's got no value. The halacha is the Gemara in Shabbos says you're not allowed to carry urine once it's 3 days old, or up to 40 days. Once more than 40 days, you don't. Again, it's a very big question that the Rishonim all ask. How can you be chayav for carrying over here? You're carrying something which has got no value, and there are two basic malachim in the Rishonim, quite different. One malach is that we're talking about where you urinate more than a revis, or you spit more than a revis. Can you ever spit more than a revis? Not so easy. You have to spit a very big amount. Because when it's a revis, then it's got value for other things. You can use it to wash things down, etc. So more than a revis. Others say, big chumrah, that when a person's got saliva in his mouth, it's uncomfortable. Urine as well. So therefore, you're carrying, the fact is you're relieved to get rid of it. So therefore, that itself gives it value. A minute should say that can't be a value. Oh, that's what they ask. That is Machlek position. And since you're very excited, there's a safe called Piskit. It was a beautiful safe. I wouldn't want to get it. It's got like the very not for the brown safe. And they said it's coming out to new print. So I'm waiting for the new print when I'm aboard it. Nicer. Is they've got a whole chiluk about what happens. You're walking home from you invited out for Shabbos, Friday night, and you're walking home and suddenly you find in your mouth a tiny bit of chicken between your teeth. What should you do? Okay, man should go to the Eiruvin. If you don't have the Eiruvin, what would you do? So he's carrying, you see what Yehuda says in our Mishnah Terishka B'Fiv. What? Well, it's not much less value than the saliva in your mouth.
You spit it out on the spot, what you over.
Oh, that's a big problem. So it means that Shiur from Shmuel was now, before you leave somebody's house, you should pick your teeth. I told you all love hummus, don't you? So he says, only that which is easy to get out. Things which are difficult to get out, you don't have to. But as I say that... What? Okay, there's a lot of halachas. There's a lot of halachas. Again, the Mishnah tells us basically 3 things, if you want to summarize. We've got a lot to do. 1, if you're standing in one area, you're allowed to carry in another area, right? You're allowed to stand in your house and carry Nushas Surabim. Why? We're not chayshesh, you'll bring it in. That's one area. The second halacha Mishnah is talking about is the Issa, Akira, and Hanocha by just urinating. The third halacha is that when you've got something in your mouth, like spit, saliva, you're over for carrying on Shabbos. So if you've got something in your mouth, you have to spit it out. 3 different halachas. We passed in all 3. Says the Gemara, Masni lei Rav Chinna bar Shamia lechir barav kamei Rav. Rav Chinna bar Shamia was teaching Chir bar Rav in front of Rav. Can you imagine? It'd be a stressful job to teach the son of Rav in front of Rav himself. I imagine it says to teach my son. What? Yes, many times he got told off, yes. And what did he teach him? The opposite of our Mishnah. You're not allowed to. Not like our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says you're allowed to. In a few Mishnahs time, not the next Mishnah, not the next Mishnah after, about 4 Mishnahs later, there's going to be a machlekes of Me'ah Nechachomim regarding a key. Are you allowed to carry a key in Rishus Harabim and open the door in Rishus Harabim, or you chayshish, you may come to carry to Rishus Hayachid? Rashi explains that machlekes is the same machlekes of our Mishnah. So therefore, there, Rameh is Machmir and the Chomim are Meiko. And in our Mishnah, we're passing like who? Like the Tanakh, like the Chomim, which is Meiko. So he said to him, what are you doing? You're teaching him that it's forbidden, that shit is from Meir. We pass like the Chomim, that it's all right. Top of the Testament. Who saw that? With the Sefer Rameh, since Rameh is quoted later, so he thought that the right version of the Mishnah, the right Gilson in our Mishnah is like Rameh. Sefer Rameh v'Yeshua Abanon, it's a mistake. Sefer Rameh and Yeshua Abanon. So again, we have a fundamental machlokes, or you're allowed to stand in one rishus and carry in another rishus. Our Mishnah says it's permitted. The next Mishnah says it's permitted. But there's another Mishnah which says it's forbidden. He understood that since there's a later Mishnah which says it's forbidden, it's more likely that our Mishnah is also saying it's forbidden. And no, Gemara says that later Mishnah is Shittas Rameh, this Mishnah is Chachamim, we pass it to Chachamim that you are allowed to. Okay. Tos is very, very disturbed that why would you make such a mistake? So there's one thing if it's the next Mishnah. It's like 4 Mishnahs later, how it is, it's a very difficult to understand. That means he changed the gilsa of the Mishnah, he changed the version of the Mishnah to accommodate Shittas Rameh, who's quoted in 4 Mishnahs later, when really the Mishnah is clearly saying not like Rameh, and there it's a machlokes. Okay, it's a difficulty. Let's go to that. So we should be aware, it is a machlokes of Chachamim. We pass like the Chachamim that what? You are allowed to, right? You're allowed to lean out of your window and move things from one side to the other, or the vice versa. Says the Gemara, you're not allowed to take it outside. It's a proof to Rava. This is again where the proof to Rava is. I'm only going to say Rashi. Now I'll tell you this question of Rashi. Rashi understands that the Mishnah says if you stand in the Rishus Hayachid, what is a Rishus Hayachid, says Rashi? There are many kinds of Rishus Hayachid. One is a house. There's another very kind of simple, is a roof. A rooftop is Rishus Hayachid. Now if you stand, imagine I'm standing on the roof of my house, and it must be quite tall. I pick something up from the floor, let's say I'm standing next to my house on the Berry New Road. Pick up something from Berry New Road, I put it down on Berry New Road. The Mishnah tells me that I am pot, I'm allowed to, as long as I don't do more than 4 amas. If I do more than 4 amas, what have I done? An issa. Now, if you think about it, which issa have I done? I picked it up. How high did it go? More than 10 tefachim. Then I put it down, went lower than 10 tefachim. So it went into a mokim chiyuv, to a mokim petur, to a mokim chiyuv. So therefore, so this is a chiddush of Rava. It says, well, you pass it over a place of a shusarabim. So you see from our Mishnah the same idea, because the Mishnah says you're only allowed to do if it's less than 4 hours. If it's more than 4 hours, says Mishnah is forbidden. So you see that our Mishnah is like Rava. So Mona says, no, who told the Mishnah says you're chayav? The Mishnah just says if you did it, it's awesome. Let me take this. From the right from the Mishnah, you've got no right. Could be the Mishnah is telling you that if you do 4 amas, it's also to do abundant. Could be the Mishnah is telling you that you're chayav. You don't know. So therefore, from the Mishnah, you've got no raya. Rava says you're chayav, like you said. Why you're chayav according to Rava? Because you never paused. And that's indeed how we paskin. But from the Mishnah, you've got no raya, because Mishnah could be saying that's Issav Dabon. Also, maybe it's a kash on Rava. If you do it over your head, chayav. So maybe Mishnah says chayav chatas. Let me take this. Rava tells us, and that's how we pass that if you take it above your head, even though you've gone from mokim chiyuv to mokim petur to mokim chiyuv, you're potter. That's a shittas Rava. From the Mishnah, you got no right either way. Either the Mishnah, when the Mishnah says to don't do it more than 4 amas. So now we don't know is the Mishnah saying that if you do it, you'll be chayav chatos, or if you do it, you'll be over to abundant. Since we don't know, we can't establish, and therefore you've got no proof. This is disturbed from Rashi, as you can understand, that where does the Mishnah say a remnants of the fact that we talk about a rooftop? Maybe it is interestingly enough, it's on Sadik Chesed Medalef, the middle of this, it says, V'heksh kosher, the gagman dochar shmei. Who mentioned the rooftop? Maybe we're talking about you're standing outside your window and you're moving it within the 10 tefachim. Who said we're talking about how the 10 tefachim? Where do you sit? So let's go on to Malach. Okay. Says the Mishnah, Yamadad Mishusach V'chulu. Omav Yosef. Hishtin Nechok Chayav Chatas. If a person on Shabbos stands in a Shusayachit and he urinates into a Shusarabim, or he spits, he's Chayav Chatas. You need to do an akira and an anocha. And you need to do an akira from a place which is 4x4, and you haven't done it from your mouth or from your ear. You haven't done an akira from a place which is 4x4. Answers well, when a person wants to use a place with a proper intention, that is considered a choshva place. Halach is if you pick up, let's say from the top of a lamppost, you pick something up and put it down. You're not done this because it's not a choshva place. But if it's an important place to you, that makes it important. Says the Gemara. If you throw, sometimes you see people throw a ball and the dog catches it midair, right? So let's say you want to feed your dog. So you take a bagel, you throw it and it lands in the dog's mouth. Are you chayav? Yes. Oh, the dog's mouth is not 4x4. The answer is that's what your intention. A choshva place, it makes it a place, and therefore the chayav. And the same thing by urine and by rock. If you do it, you're chayav chatos. Who b'shusayachit? If a person is standing in shusayachit, upi amo b'shusarabim, and the amo is in the shusarabim, meaning the eva goes out into the shusarabim mouth, and then he urinates into the shusarabim. Bosa kiros dinon bosa yitzios dinon teiku. So what happens is you're standing in the Rosh Hashanah, so you're not allowed to urinate into Rosh Hashanah. But let's say the Eber goes out past the borderline of the Rosh Hashanah. So do we go after the place where it leaves the body, and where it leaves the body is where the Rosh Hashanah is therefore you're okay? Or do we say no? It's the place where it was accumulated. Where was it accumulated? In the bladder, which is inside the body. So where. No, I think Mashad Vashon means that either place, we don't know which place we're discussing, could be, we're not sure which place, where it's bothering you. So do we discuss that it's a cure from the place where from your body, or is it from the place where it leaves the body? So it's teikus shayla. Now, when the person has saliva in his mouth, there's a couple of stages. One stage is it's just got simple saliva. Another stage is when it accumulates. The way it accumulates is usually when a person turns it over in his mouth. He can make a certain action of rolling it around his mouth to accumulate the saliva. Now, once you've rolled it around your mouth, it's much more saliva, it's much more likely to be a liquid. So what it says, the Mishnah's mashma, if you've got saliva in your mouth, even if you didn't roll it around your mouth, it's already called a liquid, you're not allowed to walk in the shuzam. But tonight, the halacha is, we've had this halacha many times, in order for something to become tummy, what's the first thing it needs to do? Become wet. So let's say you took some figs, wet willingly, very good, and you put them in your mouth. Now, they never got wet before. They never ever got wet before. Now they'll get wet, but now it's too late, not tummy. What happens is they're truma. Truma becomes tummy even from hands which are tummy. And let's say while you're eating these figs, you find there's a pip or stone in your mouth. So you take your tummy hand, stick it inside your mouth to pull out the stone. You do, because it makes it tastier better. Digestion. Okay. So now the question is like this. Do we say it's wet? Or do we say, wait a second, what made it wet? Saliva. Saliva is not a liquid. It's not yet been accumulated. That means, do we consider it properly wet? But now, with tummy hands, take out the stone. So Meir says your tummy because it's got saliva is a liquid. The Rabbi says saliva is not a liquid. If you rolled it around tummy. So you see that Yehuda holds, when is it a liquid? Only once you rolled it around your mouth. So why in our Mishnah did he say that you're not allowed to walk in the shusam if you've got saliva in your mouth? And he never says only if you rolled it around this mashra, all saliva is forbidden. And here he says that only if you rolled it around your mouth. Answers the Gemara. Now, 9 out of 10 times when Moses says Mukhlefes Hashita, what does it mean Mukhlefes Hashita? Very good. Change. Why do you say Shema? That's what Rashi says here. But normally it means like what Tony was saying, another said, Mukhlefes Hashita is we change the person. That which Meir said, the Pharisee said, that's what Pharisee said, the Meir said it. The wrong, you're attributing it to the wrong person. That's how Rashi always explains it. Rashi over here says, no, Mukhlefes Hashita means that Rabbi Yehuda retracted. Mitzvah, not let's get upset with Rashi, because the Lashon Mukhlefes doesn't usually mean to retract. Mukhlefes means to swap. But Rashi over here does say Mukhlefes Hashita. What happened was Rabbi Yehuda changed his mind.
Sometimes when you want to eat something, before you eat it,
right?
If it's like, you're looking for something that's tasty, your mouth already starts salivating. It's not already considering.
That is without rolling around. It's already becomes saliva.
What? Yeah, but it's not. That has to be intentional. Is that what you're saying? It's not shut that it's the actual saliva being in your mouth. It's the intention of actually making saliva. That's what you're saying.
I'm not
because
sure.
if you hold this debate, the muscle debate,
yes,
it tastes makes sense. Your mouth starts.
I would wonder that if a person starts salivating, it's the same as rolling it around because it is there. Because it's the same idea. It's created the saliva. Rolling it is you do it with an action. Salivating is like automatic action.
Yes. Clearing your throat, so you're doing that, or
I don't think you're creating.
Well, if you're creating.
Oh, so the more where's just see basically it's coming out to the second test of the more. So the one test of the more is that there's a difference between that's a bit to change his mind, or so the Torah actually argues and says Mukhlefes Hashita means that it's the wrong person. Phlegm is slightly more liquidy than saliva, and that is indeed is always no good. That's always no good. No, sorry, that is always considered a separate entity from the body. Saliva is not considered a separate entity, but phlegm is a separate entity.
Because you don't want to know.
Because it's a much more of a real item. It's a separate entity. Sure. It's not just saliva. But well, now the more brings two brises, more eventually shows like that. But Tanya Gils over here is not easy to. We're talking about with phlegm, and only if it separated, mashma that phlegm which hasn't separated not. Now allow work with nitlash. Mashma that also spit has to be separated. Look, keichoy with nitlash, only phlegm which is nitlash, not work with nitlash. But tell you he says specifically that both phlegm and saliva, both phlegm and spit, both of them, you're only chayav, it's only considered a liquid once it's separated. Then lo yalech arba mitzad shiorek, and mechavot shouldn't make code. That means we see there's no difference between phlegm and saliva. Rabbi Yehuda holds they both have exactly the same halacha. And since they hold exactly the same halacha, we're left with the question, what's the difference in our Mishnah where it doesn't talk about rolling it around, and the Mishnah in where was it? A Mishnah in Kedim, which talks about rolling it around. And the Gemara says the second answer was the difference between phlegm and saliva. The Gemara says it's not true. Why is it not true? Because we see that he says it's the same halacha. So the only answer we have left is that it's Rabbi Yehuda. You have to say change the shitta. Because Rabbi Yehuda retracted according to Rashi. Omar Shlokish keach b'fnei Rabbi. If a person makes phlegm in front of his Rebbe, chayim misa. There's the daish never kumesanai over moves arti kumesanai elena masniai. So here, actually, interesting enough, there's a couple of different explanations. The sanai means those who hate me. Masniai make me hated. One pshat is when a person spits, etc., makes a lot of spitting, it puts people off. And then, because it puts people off, therefore makes people feel a hate towards Torah mitzvahs. The problem with that is, why is it only in front of your Rebbe? It should be in front of anybody. Why is it after in front of the Rebbe? Oh, so therefore, where Torah is more covered. Alternatively, Mashal says, those who cause that the Rebbe is like a representative of Hashem, and the Rebbe who sees his Talmud behaving badly gets to hate the Talmud. So you're reflecting their hatred of Hashem, so to speak, from the Rebbe to the Talmud. So the son of Avomovas, those who cause me to hate, meaning the Rebbe to hate, is Avomovas. That's not Shabbos. Pashup Pshat is that it's just making, not that it's the Rebbe's coming to hate the Talmud, it's coming to other people to hate Torah when they see people behave like that. Fedwa Vominis on this, a person it's not his choice. A person gets phlegm sometimes without any choice. The Gemara says, Keach v'vok coming on. Rashi explains that you don't need to spit there. If a person has phlegm, what he should do is, he should walk away and spit elsewhere. What makes him spit in front of everybody? That's no good. The person.
Yeah,
You can spit to the side.
It's less rude to walk off and cover your mouth and spit.
I hear. Lord Rashba, it is possible to move away to spit. Okay. So our Mishnah taught us three halachas. Our Surah taught us three halachas. That means one is that if you're standing in one domain, you're allowed to carry another domain, even though it's machik su'mechamim. Another thing is that urinating is also, even though it is, even though your what's the word for it? It's not akir mokim albo, it's still also. And finally, the third is regarding saliva in one's mouth. A person should not accumulate the saliva more. The Mishnah says a very, very important halacha. Because there's a lot of Mishnah on a lot of these halachas. That sometimes people don't realize they urinate in the Rishus HaYachid, and what happens? It trickles out. Or they urinate in the Rishus HaRabim and it trickles into a house. And if they do that, they've done carrying on Shabbos and they've done a terrible avis. Oh, says the Mishnah like this. This one line maybe. The Mishnah says it depends if it trickles from Rishus HaRabim to Rishus HaYachid or vice versa. But it's definitely also. Because even though it's gromor, but you're doing an Issa D'Oraisa begromor, and that's wrong. Or if it only goes into a karmelis and then it says it's okay. Is that okay? So you have to remember, if it trickles out of the area that you're urinating to an area which is a karmelis, that's okay. Because it's a gromor b'drabanon, and it doesn't call gromor, because it's koichoy. It's indirect movement, and that's only drabon. But nasheinkein, if so, to a karmelis is okay, but into Rishus HaRabim, into Rishus HaYachid, it says not. Says the Mishnah. No, it's not. At first I thought that, but here you've got all kinds of other things. And also we have Mokum usually a person needs to. It's interesting. Mishnah writes a few places Shahad Sian. Don't think that a double drabon is mutter and not a triple drabon. I was once speaking to the Fak. I said, I've got situations like a full drabon is a mutter. He said, no such thing. I was talking about this. It's getting rid of a wasp in a sukkah. Where you can get full drabon. No, it's still awesome. Says the Mishnah, Lo Yamud Odom B'Rishus HaYachid, V'yishtu B'Rishus HaRabim, B'Rishus HaRabim, V'yishtu B'Rishus HaYachid. In the last Mishnah, we talk about carrying from one area to another area. You're standing in Rishus HaYachid, carrying Rishus HaRabim. Here we talk about standing in Rishus HaYachid and leaning out of your window and drinking Rishus HaRabim. Says the Mishnah, that's forbidden. Anybody wants to explain why that should be different from moving in Rishus HaYachid, Rishus HaRabim? Okay, we have to understand why it's different. If let's say I'm standing by this window and I'm carrying and bearing you from one end to another, I'm allowed to, as long as I move more than 4 hours. oh, here we're more machmir that you're not allowed to drink. That means we're not allowed to lean out of this window and drink. Why? Unless you move most of your body into the place you're drinking, but then that way we're not choishish that you will come to bring back. Because since you're leaning so far out of the window, you're not going to swallow it. Simply by a wine press, tomorrow we'll discuss what we'll talk about a wine press. I saw a very interesting safe with Evan Asom. He asks an interesting question. What happens first? Do you drink urinate first or urinate first? You always drink first. So where would you have done the Mishnah? It's the last Mishnah talks about
Urination.
And this Mishnah talks about drinking. It's the wrong order. So it says two interesting answers. One is this Mishnah, there's a possibility of doing Issa D'Oraisa, while urinating is generally only D'Rabban, like we will explain. We're talking about that the will explain in a minute. We're talking about tzrichino, things that you really want, so you move. Here's D'Oraisa. Sorry. Other way around. There it's D'Oraisas. Here it's Exera Otu D'Oraisas. That's right. So he says another interesting reason. He says that it's much more common that you will need to urinate from Shus Rabim. But Mashenkin, then you need to drink suddenly. So therefore the Mishnah talks about what's more common than let's go. Okay. Failing more. The first Mishnah says you're allowed to, and this Mishnah says you're not allowed to. This Mishnah says you're not allowed to. And here Rashi asks a question which gets everybody to be very, very busy. It's actually like a tosis. The first Mishnah told us before you're allowed to carry from A to B. This Mishnah says you're not allowed to. So says Rashi, it's like stira. Why are you suddenly contradicting? Asks Rashi, if you lean your head out of the water, sometimes I tease my children and I say to them, are you full up? They say yes. I say, open your mouth, let me see. They get very excited about it. Now the reality is that there's nothing to see. Right? What happens when you drink? It goes straight into your stomach. Fakes Rashi that when you're drinking, it's not a matter of carrying the Shus Rabim from one area to the other area. You're carrying from the Shus Rabim to Shus Yochid. If I lean out of the window and I take a drink, what am I doing? The Shus Rabim to Shus Yochid. So how can you compare it to the previous Mishnah? The other Mishnah will talk about you leaning out of the window and you're moving from A to B. Here, you're leaning out the window, taking a drink, and it lands in your stomach. Your stomach is. As the Gemara says later. At this stage, the Gemara didn't say that. So what? It says Rashi, a very interesting svor, because it lands in your mouth and then it goes to your stomach. So you're going from a Shus Rabim to a Mokim Petur and then to a Shus Yochid. So because your mouth is outside. Again, you're leaning your mouth outside, taking a drink. So it goes from Shus Rabim to your mouth to Shus Yochid to your stomach. It says Rashi, that's okay.
Why do you need Rabbi? Just have Roshai.
That's exactly the Gemara's question. Since it is a Mokim Petur, that's Gemara's asking, why is our Mishnah forbidden? That's Gemara's asking, so why is Mishnah forbidden? The last Mishnah, and the Mishnah, the Mishnah permits it only if it's Rosh Hashanah. Again, the Gemara asks a question, why is it Osa? In the last Mishnah, he said it's Mutter. Faked Rashi, what do you mean? You can't compare. The last Mishnah, you weren't moving anything for Shus, you were staying in another domain. Answers Rashi that the mouth, so Tony's asking, it's a Mokim Choshev. Mokim Choshev over here is only when you wanted to stay there. Here, it's not a place where you wanted to be.
No, that's nothing about spit. That's where it's come from.
That's where it's come from.
He wanted it in his stomach.
He wanted it in his stomach, yes.
You want to be quenched.
Okay, says the Gemara, that means things that you need and you're likely to keep, everybody agrees is forbidden, including water. Meaning, just like if you've got something important for you, you're not allowed to pick up the Shus Rabim because we're scared you're bringing it to the Shus Yochid. So to buy water, since we're scared that you'll try to straight away, you'll end up scooping the water into the house because you're desperate for a drink. So therefore, we forbid it. Eboilu, Karmelis Mai. What happens if you're standing in the Karmelis and you want to drink water from Shus Rabim? Do we say that since it's a D'Rabbanan, therefore the word Machmir? Or do we say no Machmir? It's the same halacha. What's my proof that B'D'Rabbanan is also? Midiktani. Top of Sadik Test with base. The Mishnah says the same halacha applies to wine press. Now, wine press, what's the chiddush? What's the difference between a wine press or a house? Must be that the wine press is a karmelis, and since it's a karmelis, there's a double D'Rabbanan. And after became, otherwise, what's the Mishnah adding? And also by wine press. It's a good question. It could be more similar to Afsu. Not only in the Shushabim, but even in the Karmelis. So the Mishnah says, and also the wine press. What's the Mishnah adding? It must be adding a Karmelis. Rava says a whole new Mahalach which we've actually had once before. When the Mishnah says gas, it doesn't mean Hilchos Shabbos. It's referring to a completely different halacha. The halacha is drinking wine. You're not allowed to drink wine until you take Trumas HaMaaseh from it. If you drink wine temporarily, you're allowed to drink without taking Trumas HaMaaseh. What's called temporarily? If you go into a wine press and drink it in the wine press, that's called temporarily. You don't take Trumas HaMaaseh. So the Mishnah says v'chein begas. So too regarding the halachas of Trumas HaMaaseh. If you put your head into a wine press and you drink, so we have the same halacha. That's the insight. V'chein amav sheishus v'chein begas lin and ma'aser. The plan sheishus and gas. You're allowed to drink wine in the wine press without taking Trumas HaMaaseh. Bein bechamin or bein betzonen. Whether you diluted it with hot water or you diluted it with cold water, or potter, you don't have to do some Trumas HaMaaseh. Like this. When you dilute the wine, it sounds like you're trying to sit down and really enjoy the wine. So then you would have thought that's called the kviyos, that's called the establishment, and therefore you should have to take Trumas HaMaaseh. This first standard holds, that even if you dilute the wine, and if you're showing that it's important to you, the wine, since you're drinking the wine in the wine press, Chazal said that's called temporary drinking. Temporary drinking, don't do Trumas HaMaaseh. If you're walking in the orchard and there's soap, and you see grapes, you're allowed to pull off a grape and eat it. Why allowed to pull off a grape and eat it? Where's the Trumas HaMaaseh? Because you haven't made a meal out of it. So if you're walking in the wine press, you're allowed to drink without taking Trumas HaMaaseh. So there's considered. Rabbi Elazar says Yechayav. Why? Because you've diluted it, and by diluting it, you're showing that you're making a meal out of it. Is what? So there's people who drink wine, they're very strong. When you dilute it with cold water, if you have leftover in your cup, what do? You pour it back into the wine press because it's got cold water anyway. Hot water ruins the wine, right? Those are wine connoisseurs. I'm sure wine connoisseurs, right? So hot water ruins it. So therefore, when you dilute it with cold water, since the remainder of it you're going to pour back in, so you're not showing an importance to wine. So therefore, you're just having a sip. So that you don't need to take Trumas HaMaaseh. When you dilute it with hot water, so you're not going to pour it back in. So then it's chashivus. Says Rashi that this Mishnah is going b'shittas rameh. That whatever happens, you're always potter. Whether you diluted it, whether you don't dilute it, you're always potter. But only if you're drinking it in the wine press. Because you pour back the rest when it's cold. Rashi by hot you do. Says Rashi, Amish is going to be shittas rameh. That whatever happens, you're always potter. Why are you always potter? Because it is not considered an important drink when you're drinking the wine press. But it's only if you're in the wine press. What's considered to be in the wine press? If most of your body is in the wine press, then you're potter. So if you're standing outside the house, and then what happens is you put your head, you're outside the wine press, and you put your head and most of your body into the wine press, you're allowed to drink without Trumas HaMaaseh. If only your head is in the wine press, then you have to take Trumas HaMaaseh. Because then you've taken it out of the wine press, and then it's a chashivus. Again, what we learned in our Mishnah? We learned in our Mishnah you're not allowed to drink when you're standing somewhere unless most of your body goes out. Why? It's not like the previous Mishnah, because in this Mishnah it's something which is important to you, and since it's important to you, Chazal were more machmir, and we're chayshish you'll bring it back in. It's a D'Rabbanan, not a D'Oraisa, like you said before. It's a D'Rabbanan now, Mishnah. Now, we have a machlokes Abai v'Rava. What happens by a Karmelis? We pass in the kula like Rava. Abai says, when Mishnah says v'chein begas, a wine press. What's the Mishnah talk about? Must be talking about Karmelis. Rava says we talk about wine press. We've moved away from Hilchos Shabbos. We've moved on to Hilchos Trumas HaMaaseh, and we're discussing moving your head into a place where it's got Trumas HaMaaseh, whether it's considered that you're drinking in the wine press or not. If most of your body is in the wine press, okay. What else do we have? Anybody know? Sukkah. Now, there are two different kinds of gutters. I'm really sorry, I should put up the pictures, but the truth matter is, Ours could have a better picture. I must say, Ours could have the next few pages I saw. Ours could have better pictures than things. But basically, it's not so complicated. There's a gutter which goes across the roof, and there's a gutter that goes down off the roof and out of the roof. A downpipe. Is that what it's called in English? Downpipe. Okay. Now, the Mishnah tells us. We're talking about if water drips off a gutter from a roof, and you're standing in the Shus Rabbim and you catch the water. Done anything wrong? Right, so the roof is a Rishus HaYachid. It comes off the roof into a gutter, falls through the air, and it lands in your hand. Can you drink from it? The answer is yes, even though you're Rishus HaYachid, like you said. The reason is like this. It was on the roof of Rishus HaYachid. It went out of the roof over than 10 tefachim. Where is it now? Mochi P'tur. From Mochi P'tur to Rishus HaYachid, you caught it. You've done nothing wrong. So you're allowed to drink from it. Right. If you were to take it off, right, you didn't even do the movement. Okay, let's check this. Maschela is the normal gutter which goes across the roof. If you're lower than 10 tefachim, that means if you're standing lower than 10 tefachim and it drips into your hand, even though you're lower than 10 tefachim, so you're now in Rishus HaRabim, you're allowed to. Which is a different kind of pipe, that's the one which goes down pipe, which comes away from the house, and it goes down from the roof. You can drink it any way you want. That means the Mishnah is more makel by a down pipe than by a runner pipe. We'll call a runner pipe the one which runs along the roof. The Mishnah is more makel by a down pipe than by a runner pipe. I'm going to explain the cheshbon outside first, because otherwise how it works. It's very simple cheshbon like this. When you put your hands next to a roof, the roof is Rishus HaYachid, and it's like you've added, if you put your hands next to the roof, let's say this table is the roof, and I put my hands right next to the table, right? So what I've done is I've extended the roof. Then what happens is the water goes from the roof into my hand, it's proper Rishus HaYachid, the roof is Rishus HaYachid. Then I lower the hands down and take it into Rishus HaRabim and drink, I've done Rishus HaYachid, Rishus HaRabim. Because it's part of the roof. When you go in these pipes that comes away from the house and I catch water, even if I put my hands onto the pipe, I'm not carrying from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim, because that pipe has got no connection to the Rishus HaYachid. It's a flow-away pipe. A flow-away pipe is not considered part of the house, and therefore it's not considered carrying from Rishus HaYachid. What? It's a Mochi P'tur. Because it's now, we're talking about what's higher than 10 tefachim Rishus HaRabim drops, it's nothing wrong, you've done nothing. Or if you're selling Rishus HaRabim to Rishus HaRabim, to Rishus HaYachid, to Rishus HaYachid, because you're not allowed to carry from one Rishus HaYachid, unless it's your rooftop to my garden. Unless you've got a pipe going from your roof and it flows out, I'm allowed to stand in my garden and catch the water. Even if I put my hands next to it, it doesn't matter. Let's look more inside. You're allowed to catch the water in the first case of Mitzvah. You're not allowed to put your hands next to the roof. We're talking about with the gutters next to the roof, within 3 tefachim. If the pipe running next to the roof was more than 3 tefachim away from the roof, then it wouldn't be a problem to put my hands there as well. Why? Since there's a gap of 3 tefachim from the pipe to the roof, it's considered a separate rishus. But here we talk about where the pipe is next to the roof. Since the pipe is next to the roof, so the pipe is part of the roof. I add my hands to the pipe, I've made the pipe bigger, so I've added to Rishus HaYachid. The chapochet is part of the roof. To catch. You're allowed to catch the water. If you're not allowed to join it up. I'm going to show you. So the two brises are exactly the same. One brise says you're allowed to catch, but you're not allowed to put your hands there. The second brise says you're not allowed to put your hand there, but you're allowed to catch. Meaning like this. When you got a gutter, part of the Rishus HaYachid, next example, you see a gutter, which is next to the roof. What's the status of that gutter? Very good. It's a Rishus HaYachid. It's an extension of the Rishus HaYachid. It's like, for example, if you have a roof which goes past, sometimes you have this is the wall of the house, and then you have overhang. So that's all part of the Rishus HaYachid. The overhang is part of the Rishus HaYachid. The gutter, underneath, not necessarily. On top of it, I'm talking about the Rishus HaYachid. Therefore, what happens is, if you put a gutter next to your rooftop, that gutter has the status of a Rishus HaYachid. Now, if I'm standing in Rishus HaRabim, I'm standing on Berry New Road, and you have a gutter, and water is dripping out of that gutter, and I catch it, I'm fine. Because I have caught it from when it's gone landed through a Mochi P'tur into Rishus HaYachid, I've done nothing wrong. Sorry, to Rishus HaRabim, I've done nothing wrong. If I put my hand next to your gutter, I'm quite tall, and then I catch the water there, I bring it down to Rishus HaRabim, then I'm not allowed to, because that's considered new. If the bottom of the pipe has a ledge which is 4 by 4, then it's forbidden. If you got a pipe coming away from your house, and at the bottom of the pipe you make a whole platform, a whole place to catch the water, which is 4 by 4. 4 by 4, 10 tefachim high, it's Papa Shusayachit. So I'm not allowed to take from there. It's only if the pipe is very narrow, less than 4 by 4, and just water's flowing out of it, then it's a Mokim P'tur. Next Mishnah. It's a shame not to have the picture. Oh, I think I could also have a picture here. Do you have a picture? Oh, he says the picture is estic. Here. No, it's wrong. If you got a well in the Shusayachit, Ask for the Mishnah says like this. If you've got a well, which is 10 tefachim, he says, no, let's quickly get this while we're doing this. Where is that picture? Yeah. You can say, first put up these two pictures, and then you put up these pictures of the picture to see all the pictures of this page, but first we'll start with these. Right, for those. But basically, it's not so hard to picture. I've got it in my Gemara. I'll hang it up for those who don't have access to their phones. Here. Can you see? No, if you can see so well. Basically like this. Let's explain the idea. You've done all 8 pictures. You do the top 4. Do the top 4 as well, because then you've got a picture of the previous Gemara where you can see that you're not allowed to join. If you look at picture top Kufa and Tess, the person's putting a bowl next to the roof, so therefore what happens is making his roof bigger. It's not bad pictures, right? Again, if you've got a well which is 10 tefachim, so that well is Rosh Hashanah. You've got a Rosh Hashanah in between. You can sling your bucket out of your window into the well, pull out water, and get water into your house. Or if you've got a rubbish bin, what? No, we don't say that. We'll see. Good pictures. Now, for example, in Eretz Yisrael, you have these massive bins. Unless you've got a massive bin in the Rosh Hashanah. Sardim, fogs they're called, yes. And you're standing in the Shusach house, and you want to throw an empty bottle from your house into the bin, it's mutter. Your house is Shusach. Why is it mutter? I'll go straight away to the Maskana. Because when you take the water or throw the rubbish, it never goes lower than 10 tefachim. So therefore, you're in the Shusach, the well or the bin is the Shusach, and what's the area in between? Mokim P'tur, because you had a 10 tefachim. So therefore, it's okay. But my Yaskino says, so okay, let's admit the Mishnah again, pop inside. Boy, we should say, it's 10 tefachim high. Chalon shagabov, if you go into buy it, when man in the men of Shabbos can fill up the water. Ask for should say, chalon shagabov, you can throw out your water. But my Yaskino, if the well is right next to your house, why do you have to have 10 tefachim? What's the 10 tefachim? There's a 4 tefachim gap, meaning there's a proper reshus harabim in between. Because since it's 4 tefachim, no, it's a cameras, but even without that, if it's part of reshus harabim, even so it's mutter. So why is it mutter? If you've got a 4 tefachim space, for tama the ikar chulya asor, leka chulya asor, kvetat reshus harabim. We're talking about when you've got a 4 tefachim gap between your house and the well, by moving it from one to the next. Since you're staying above the 10 tefachim, you're okay. If the depth of the well is only 5 tefachim, and the water around the well is 5 tefachim, it joins together to make it a That's the Chiddush of our Mishnah. So even if it is adjacent to the house, there's still a Chiddush. The Chiddush being that what? That is considered the 5 below and the 5 on top is considered the joint, and therefore it becomes a Shusay Achid. Ashba Shusay V'chulu. Afraid the Gemara, it's not an Ashba. When you throw something that's a rubbish heap, which is 10 tefachim by 4, it's mutter. Why is it mutter if it's 10 by 4? The Shusay Achid. And I'm throwing it out fast. Let's say you're standing in this house. Here it's a Shusay Achid this way. And you can reach Berry Old Road, the other side of Berry Old Road. And the other side of Berry Old Road has a rubbish pile, 10 by 4. That rubbish pile is a din of Shusay Achid. So you're allowed to throw something from the window here to that rubbish pile? Yes. Oh, maybe the rubbish pile will go down, and it'll be less than 10 by 4, and then you'll be throwing it into Shusay Achid. Was a movi. She sits on one side that had a wall of the sea, but echad kol ashba. But myself, if they Rebbe blame about the Yisrael Hete, he didn't want to permit it, he didn't want to forbid it. Why? Hete maybe the rubbish pile will go down. And since it goes down, it will no longer be a wall. Or maybe the sea will add sediments. Does anybody remember what that means? Moshe, do you remember what that means? Yeah, out of it. If you've got a sea, is a sea considered a wall? Moshe, what's that? Is a sea considered a barrier? Depends not how high, how the gradient is. If the gradient is very sharp, if it's 10 tefach within 4 hours, here they had a mavui which needed a wall, and the sea was a wall because the gradient was good. Rebbe did not want to permit it. Why did he not want to permit it? The gradient can alter. How can the gradient alter? Because maybe sediments will come up, maybe the sand will come in, and then what will happen is it will go shallower, and it will take 10 amos to be 10 tefachos, and it's no good. Alternatively, the other side was a wall of rubbish. Maybe the rubbish will go down. So you see over here, and again, the wall carries on. So we see that we don't rely on the rubbish pile being 10 tefachim high. We are choishish that what will happen is every time it goes down. The kasha or the yochid or the rabbi, an individual rubbish pile sometimes goes away. A public rubbish pile, once it's there, never gets removed. Therefore, when our Mishnah says that you can rely on it to talk about public rubbish never gets moved. Everybody always piles more and more rubbish onto it. Individual rubbish sometimes gets moved. But we did 4 different Mishnahs today, 4 different topics. I'm afraid that tomorrow's stuff is also very, very, very long. Wait a second. Ellie, you coming to see us on night? Very good, sure. Moshe, you coming to see us on the night? Oh, looking forward. Right. Moshe, he said yes. Sure, you're coming to the Simon too. Sure. Sunday night.
What's in COVID?
In